CNBC-TV18.
Well, let me begin by first thanking ISPP, Indian School for Public Policy, for in fact having us here and for giving us this opportunity of connecting with not just the scholars but also the Honourable Minister himself, Mr. Rajeev Chandrasekhar. And on that note, Mr. Chandrasekhar, I'd like to thank you as well for giving us this time, for connecting with us once again. Just last week, we met when we were talking about the amended IT rules that's generated a fair bit of debate. And speaking of debate, we're sitting in a room full of scholars, scholars of public policy, and speaking of public policy, we are at an inflection point. We are seeing a lot of new technologies, and we're trying to see the law grapple with those technologies in terms of developing a regulatory framework. So an exciting few months ahead as far as public policy is concerned, and not just a few months. Like the minister said in his keynote address, this is an ever-evolving exercise with the law, trying to keep pace with the technology. So an exciting times. But speaking of exciting times, one key message, Mr. Chandrasekhar, that the government is trying to put out is that we're looking at not just an open, free internet, but also accountability. Now, the concern here is that very often we get feedback from the big tech players that this may perhaps dampen spirits, may cause innovation to get dampened, may cause growth to get hurt. Now, this I'm using in reference to, of course, feedback that we're getting from a lot of industry bodies saying that over-regulation could be a problem, that ensuring accountability could, in fact, cause hurt to innovation. Your quick thoughts on that?
We are where we are as a world today because for many, many years and decades, governments of the world were led to believe that these are only innovations and this is only about technology innovation. Unfortunately, the opposite is true, that these platforms have, whether they are fintech platforms or e-commerce or social media, they have tremendous influence to do good as well as do harm. Now, when you have the ability to do harm, it is the moral obligation of every government to protect citizens from the harm. Now, if somebody laid out a case for me that all the platforms did was only good, frankly, I would be spending a lot of my time doing other things. So, but the empirical evidence is there. The evidence is there that there is considerable harm that is being created on the internet. The less vulnerable sections of our society are clearly, and when I mean less vulnerable, I mean people who are less digitally savvy find it very difficult today to, in many, many cases, to traverse the internet.
Interesting. I'll just like to build on the next question using an example. Now, last week, we had a satellite launch at ISRO, which was one of the largest launches we've seen, commercial launches from India. And at the time, I was there with a colleague. I recorded a video of the rocket launch. It's once in a lifetime experience,
yes.
36 OneWeb satellites. Interestingly, when I put that up on Twitter, I was asked to take that down. And there was a 12-hour suspension notice that I was given.
By Twitter?
By Twitter. So these are, and I realized I wasn't the only one. These are common shared experiences between very many people. The question that I'm building towards is the concept of the GAC, or the Grievance Appellate Committee, that has now been introduced by way of IT rules. You said just last week that you personally are in receipt of thousands, if not lakhs, of complaints. What was the reason felt for a GAC, for an appellate committee? Because the understanding was we already have grievance officers, or is that mechanism simply not working for us?
No, there are two reasons for it. One is that the grievance officers that we mandated in May 2021 that the platforms appoint weren't doing their job. And I've said this repeatedly, that there was probably a miscommunication or a deliberate attempt not to understand the government's intentions. When we said platforms should appoint a grievance officer, it was assumed that it would be obvious that the grievance officers would address grievances. But if you appoint a grievance officer and then bounce all the grievances back that are received as email saying thank you for sending your grievance and we will revert to you when we have to revert to you, then you're not doing your job. The second, I want to make clear to you that one of the issues that the IT rule takes care of by making sure that we mention Article 14, 19 and 21 as non-negotiable constitutional rights of our citizens that cannot be violated is to prevent the precise arbitrariness of platforms that you mentioned. We cannot allow platforms to say We do not recognize Article 19 as a fundamental right in India, and we will take Ashmit down when we don't like him, and we will keep somebody else on when we like him.
Well, the GSE, as you pointed out last time, if you would remember, just immediately after the announcement in the press conference, a lot of questions that were invited were on the lines of GSE, is this the stick that will make the companies, the social media companies, fall in line, or is there more work required?
Look, first of all, I want to say our government doesn't believe in sticks, but we surely believe in spelling out what our combined joint goals are. And once we spell it out once, twice, thrice, and I have said this repeatedly, the relationship between the government and a platform is not adversarial. We want to work in partnership to create the end outcome, which is a joint mission for us, which is safe and trusted internet. We want that. But if a platform chooses that I don't want to do this, we are not taking a stick to them. We are only saying, fine, that is your choice. But the safe harbor you have under Section 79 of the IT Act falls. You are welcome to continue to do your business, but the moment you do harm to a consumer or you are party to harm to a consumer, then the consumer will be able to sue you, and we will not stand and protect you as an intermediary with Section 79 protection. That's all we are saying. So all of this elaborate narrative, Ashmit, before you get to the next question about that, I'll preempt that, which is that whether we intend to content moderate, we intend to do nothing of the sort. The government is far too busy building a digital economy of $1 trillion. We have a lot of work on our plate, and I can assure you, it is not a great pastime on my part to figure out what mistakes A platform is making or B platform. We would like them to self-regulate. We would like them to understand the principles and the objectives that we have, because it is a win-win for them, for the digital Nagrik, and for the government. If they get it, they get it. If they don't get it and they choose to not comply with the rules, then the consequences are as I've laid down under Rule 7.
I think the Honourable Minister is only too wise to our ways. He's anticipated the question, which is essentially what I had in mind with respect to how there were some concerns expressed about government control. But you've answered that. But let me then amend the question.
Yeah, sure.
When you're talking about an appellate forum such as the GSE, where the GSE will then sit and appeal from decisions that are taken by these social media intermediaries, that will again require a very large framework in terms of number of benches, who will be manning them.
We will have, Ashwin, we will make it very simple. We will make it very digital. It is a question of a grievance being lodged there that seeks an appellate resolution. And behind the digital platform, there will be multiple benches of 333 people, 2 outsiders and 1 government nominee. And it will all be done very online. It will not require lawyers. It will not require... The whole idea of the GSE is to create an easier method to adjudicate the dispute between a platform and a citizen, which, by the way, the citizen has and the platform has the process of law. They can always go to court. We are only saying, look, that is a complicated process. It's an expensive process. Let's make it easier for both of you. If you have a dispute that you cannot resolve, go to a group of 3 people, do it digitally, you file it digitally, and get the response digitally.
Sure. Speaking of social media intermediaries, we're seeing a lot of development, a lot of work being done on the regulatory side, as well as the companies themselves on the innovation side. I'm harking to the issue of what we are seeing in the US with respect to Twitter. A lot of changes being contemplated there. That's one platform that's used by very many users. And what's interesting is that what's happening there, like for instance, charging $8 for a verified account, is now beginning to attract the attention of heads of states as well. We had the Turkish President Erdogan comment about it, saying that he might have to use diplomacy with Elon Musk. Just your take. This is something interesting we're seeing. We don't have answers to this.
Look, I am not the Turkish president, and I don't want to have any diplomatic conversation with Elon Musk. Our views are that our expectations of every platform remains intact regardless of who's the owner. We will not intervene in the business models of these platforms. There is a case where Spotify, for example, gives you free music and has a premium product where they give you priced music. So if that is the direction in which Elon Musk wants to take Twitter in, how can we sit down here and say this is the business model that is working in India or not? That is his choice. If he wants to make Twitter less relevant in India, have a smaller audience, that is his choice. So I don't think, and from what my limited understanding, it's not like he's on my speed dial or I know him well or any of that. I don't think he's saying that people will not have access, free access to internet. He's only saying that the verified access will be a blue tick access for which he will charge a premium. That's how I understand it so far. I don't know the fine print, and Elon Musk is a man. I understand we must read the fine print before we jump to any conclusion. But that doesn't bother me, and I don't want to get into this race of being, you know, the sound bites on his tweet, and I'll retweet, and then somebody else will tweet. I don't think our government is into that. At the end of the day, it's his platform. He is a shareholder, and our expectations from the platform of conforming to our rules, conforming to our laws, not violating our constitutional rights of our citizens, moderating the content, and if he can contribute in some way to our goal of making the internet a less toxic place and a more trusted place, because our goal is that our 120 crore Indians must enjoy the benefit and the privilege of having the internet being less toxic and more trusted. If he can contribute to that, I'd be happy to work with him. If not, he's just one more intermediary that I have to deal with under the laws and the rules.
I'll go back again to last week. And last week, you shared a very interesting White House press release, which highlighted a number of concerns. White House had invited very many experts in the field of technology and had sought advice on what are the concerns that are emerging right now. So we had concerns on competition law violations, privacy, talking about predatory practices, etc. One of the concerns that was red flagged was algorithmic discrimination. This is something, the algorithmic playbook of the companies is something that no one else is privy to except the companies themselves. Yet we find ourselves at a place in our lives where every decision, from the choice of the food article you want to order from an application to even your life partner,
correct,
could in very large part be determined by these algorithms. Is that perhaps the next leg of regulation that is now required?
No, 100%. I think in the concept of user harm, both bots, which are anonymous, machine learning driven identities online, backed by algorithms, both these constitute a real, clear and present danger for our objective of safety and trust. Because if it's a bot and the bot is spewing out things, and we want to live in a trusted internet, we don't know whether it's a real person or it's a bot that's putting out the stuff. The algorithmic accountability issue, which I raised in 2018 in Parliament when I was an MP, is a very, very important issue because, you know, I'm a techie, and I'm sure there are some people here who understand technology deeply. Algorithms are not some magic wand. They are coded by people. And algorithms essentially then reflect the biases of the person who codes the algorithm. And then that becomes the norm for the whole engine that is the social media engine. So algorithms only automate predetermined, pre-existing biases. It is not like algorithms are some human intelligence that discriminate right and wrong in a manner that a human cannot. I want to be very clear that algorithms are essentially machine-coded versions of a particular person's bias or a particular person's inferences. So it is very dangerous when, and recently there was a case where there was a Chinese government plant in a company that was, and he was in some sense responsible for coding the algorithms, and those algorithms were basically affecting consumers all around the world. So it is an issue that we understand very well. It is an issue that we consider in a bucket of user harms. It is an issue that the forthcoming Digital India Act, which is going to be a very contemporary, modern framework for our digital economy's growth for the next 10 years, that will certainly take that into account.
Sure, Mr. Chandrasekhar. An exciting time that we're looking at. But nonetheless, on that note, let's slip into a very short break. We'll be back in just a few moments and continue this conversation with Mr. Chandrasekhar, as well as a room full of scholars on the other side.